Well, hello. Watching some goals lately, and they're not coming from Phoenix Rising. Happy Open Cup Day. The start of the US Open Cup today, and yeah, coming right in at the start of Rising season, which has been pretty miserable. Nice little distraction at least. But welcome in to the PHNX Rising podcast this Tuesday. Max still isn't here. Some would say we've got an upgrade. We brought Devon Henderson in.
I sure hope so. I sure hope I could be an upgrade.
Indeed. We've been enjoying some of this Open Cup game so far. There's some really fun stuff going on. Of course, the first game of the lot there, Chattanooga getting knocked out by Miami United. Moving on, of course, you have Vermont Green in a real thriller with Lexington. That one ending 4-3. They were up 4-1 at one point and only just hung on.
I mean, and honestly, I think the refs were really trying to stop Lexington from losing that game. I mean, the ref called for the final whistle.
It
right?
felt like
People
twice.
started celebrating.
Yeah.
He's like, no, it's a throw-in. About 2 minutes later, mind you, all these times were past the 4 minutes added.
Yep.
He called the whistle again. People then started running on the field. They had to move the fans back for about 30 seconds. Lexington, they had something going on over there.
Oh, yeah. And having fun as well with some of those playing surfaces as well. Shout out to Tulsa Athletic for the usual public park kind of look with a wonky halfway line they've got going on.
Sunday league feel.
It is. But, you know, it's not just the halfway line in that Tulsa Athletic game that feels a little bit wonky. You could use it to describe Rising's performances lately. Looking back to the weekend, that's where we'll start as they fell 1-0 on the road to Monterey Bay FC. Now, Devon, we haven't heard your initial thoughts on this one, but go on. Let's just hear what you have to say about that game.
I mean, it felt, at least initially, like they didn't even want to play. It felt like they didn't show up. Like, we're coming into this game, right? Me and Ryan Takor, we're going to call the game. We're super excited, you know. And in my film, like before that, I watched Monterey play El Paso the week before. And I remember describing it to Ryan. I said, this team is like lethargic. They're slow. Like the attacking third didn't really seem very dangerous for them. And I'm like, this should be really easy for Rising. They were super attacking in the first game. And they come out to the second game. I'm like, yo, like, what happened? I'm expecting Rising to really be pushing the channels. I'm expecting Rising to high press. And like, they're obviously a more quality team. And you could just tell like they just were not in that game from the start. I don't know if it was like how they warmed up, how the travel was. I don't know what it was, but it just felt like, what are we doing, guys?
Yeah. It was quite a difference from that first game, because the first game, I think there were elements whereby you'd look at it and say, well, okay, it didn't go Rising's way, but you could see the foundation of something to build on there, right? The finishing wasn't always there, and the chance creation could get better, but there were a couple of chances that were created. The difference was that you went into that game against Monterey Bay, you see Phoenix Rising play and just think, this isn't building on, this is just scrap it and start again, because that's how it looked, right?
Right.
There were no obvious chances that made you think, oh, well, they were a little bit unlucky here, or maybe if they were a bit sharper, they'd have been better. It just felt like they just weren't in that game.
I mean, they don't have, like, it seemed in that game, they didn't have any killers in that final third. Nobody that wanted to go and take a goal. I mean, I remember specifically there was one where Panos was driving down the channel, and he could have taken maybe one or two touches more into the box and shot it back post. And he played it wide to, I think it was, at that point, it was Edgardo on that side. And it just feels like it was a whole lot of half chances. It was a whole lot of settling for 30-yarders. It was a whole lot of just, like, they didn't have anybody who wanted to go and grab a goal. And it was, I mean, you know, calling the game, it's like, it's really frustrating to be like, hey, man, like, what are we doing? You guys look so attacking in the first game, and now you guys can't even get into the box.
Absolutely. Well, we did hear from Phoenix Rising head coach Danny Stone earlier today, and I asked him about what the difference really between those two games to start the season off was. Here's what he said.
I think, honestly, the identity that we've talked about, we found it difficult in the first half to become ourselves, and to be a team that, you know, that wants to have the ball and wants to to be brave and to play. And obviously games dictate a little bit how much we're able to do that, and the opponent of course plays a big role, same as we're trying to limit an opponent doing things that they want to do. Obviously every team we play has a task of disrupting and stopping us as well. And so I think it was a combination of some credit to Monterey, but mostly things where we feel we can improve and things that we can fix. Nobody's panicked and nobody's concerned, other than wanting to improve on that performance and wanting to, like I say, remind ourselves of who we are as a team, and we know collectively that we're more than capable of being that again. And that first game against Birmingham was a very good example of who we are and what we can be and will be as a team. So like I say, disappointed from Saturday, certainly not panicked, but very, very keen now this weekend to make amends.
I think when you talk about kind of the way that Monterey Bay came out to stifle Rising, a large part of it to me was just the way that they pressed. They were so aggressive in terms of really just pushing up the field. Rising weren't given time on the ball to try and build their way slowly out of the back, as we've seen them do in the past. And particularly given the way sometimes that they play that first half, and the press worked, right? We saw the goal come from that effectively, right? They pushed them up the field. We see Jose Hernandez looking very poor execution on a pass in his own third and gives it away, and ultimately that's where the goal comes from. But I mean, when you look at that, how worrying is it overall, do you think, as well, to see him not deal with the press very well?
Well, I think more than just this game, it's the fact that other teams around the league will see that. They're going to notice that, hey, this press really, like, Rising at this stage can't build out of that press. And for various reasons, I mean, Lawrence White was somebody who progressed the ball really, really well through the channels in the first game, and he just didn't have the time to set up those long balls at all because of that press. And then Jose, and I said it on the broadcast, being a 6 against a high press is a really, really tough role, especially because you have to be able to master that pass that he messed up, where your back is towards your goal and you have to swing your right foot across your body to hit your outside back. It's a pass that it's tough to master. But if you look at any of like the top of the top of the world sixes, that's a pass that they've mastered, that touch and being able to hit that pass. Because in build out, you break the first line to your 6 who's checking in. You have to pass wide to your outside back who's facing forward in order to get forward. It's something that, I mean, at that stage he didn't have. Maybe it's something that he gets in his arsenal. Maybe something that he has, and it was just a bad pass, which happens. But what's worrying is that the rest of the league is going to notice that, and they're going to be like, hey, if you put a 8, or because Monterey Bay doesn't have 10s, but if you put an 8 and you have them follow those 2 6s, they're going to cause a lot of issues building out, and we can kind of stifle them.
Yeah, it's concerning, I think, because again, it kind of gives a feeling a little bit of everyone knows how Phoenix Rising is going to play.
Right.
None of this is necessarily a surprise. I just wonder with everything out there. I mean, even you look at the forwards, some of the okay, let's actually look at the other end of the pitch, right? Let's look at when Rising did actually get it up there.
Right.
How many times were you seeing in that game runs off the ball that particularly made sense among attackers? It felt like all too often what you ended up with was moments where, for example, let's say Panos has got the ball and he's driving forward. He kind of looks either side.
He doesn't get
number
a
9
run.
Is not in the middle. They're not in a dangerous area.
Right.
Everyone is grouped somewhere else. And so what he does is he takes, either takes a few more steps and takes a shot that's not a great shot, but at the end of the day, he doesn't have many more options himself on.
Yeah.
Or he's passing it to someone else who, again, isn't necessarily in a great position to take a shot on, because it felt like no one was making those runs off the ball in ways that actually threatened at all, to be honest, Monterey Bay.
And you know who was really good at making those runs? Manu Arteaga. And that, I think more than anything, I think the finishing with Manu, especially being how up and down it was, is replaceable. I think his build-out play, to an extent with Dariush, is replaceable, but his runs off the ball were extremely deadly. And he created space, whether he got the ball or not, for Danny and Panos and Koisho, whoever it was playing that 10, Fede, whoever was playing that 10 behind him. Mano's able to make those cutting runs that drag center backs out of the middle, that create that type of space. And, Rémi, he doesn't necessarily have that yet. I think he's a very straightforward, I want to use my pace, I want to get downhill, not necessarily thinking that next step ahead. And then Dariush is a lot better in build-up with the ball at his feet. I don't know if he's necessarily finding like how can I be effective off the ball yet. And that's something that generally that comes from coaching. Like Danny has to get into the practice field with them and tell them like, hey, you need to start doing these things and start looking for those things.
Yeah, I still feel as though as we look at Dariusz Formella and just the positions that he's getting into, it doesn't feel like you're watching someone playing as a 9.
No.
He has such a tendency sometimes to drift way out wide. And I mean, that would be fine if maybe your front 3 is set up in such a way that you've got someone who you know is going to tuck in and you're letting him try and drag people outside.
Right.
But you don't have that. And so what you end up with then is just, again, you end up with one of those positions where Panos has got the ball at his feet. He's looking to try and knock it to someone in the middle. And Dariusz Formella is instead hanging out by the corner flag. And that's no good to anybody.
And Dariusz, and the other thing is like Dariusz is one of those players where he thinks he's a 10. And so, and all 10s, they'll tell you if we're not getting on the ball, we go find it. And I remember, and I know it was in the second half because that's when Dariusz came on. There's a play where I don't know how he ended up on an even line with Jose in the back. I don't know if you remember that. He got on possession all the way back down there. I don't know how. I know in my career, the 9s were always told, you're not coming back there, right? Maybe not stay up high, maybe get involved in the build-up play, but you're not even with your 6 at any point. No. And he seems like he was getting frustrated by not being able to get the ball because they weren't as direct and because they couldn't build through. And so now he's dropping deeper and deeper, not realizing that he's just compacting the space for everybody. Like that 9 has to be that guy that is stretching the field, that is creating the space underneath them. And he just wasn't doing that.
Yeah. And when you add all of that up, then just none of it's really a recipe for success. I mean, again, you look at that entire game, even with the improvements in the second half, and it's still just no moment where you look at it and say, well, they could have or should have scored there. Everything just felt
lethargic.
Like that's it, right? It was lethargic. It was sloppy. It was, I mean, over the course of the game, Rising's passing accuracy just wasn't good even. You actually look at the numbers on that and it was not good. I do have the numbers somewhere here. Let's have a look. I mean, passing accuracy in the final third, 70.4. In the opposition half, 72.
That was against Birmingham.
That's against Birmingham. Sorry, yeah, it gets worse. It gets worse.
There you go.
There's actually only a third of passes in the opposition half were on target.
Right.
That's awful.
Right.
Like, what are you doing there at that point? What are you doing there? I mean, it's interesting because they've actually taken a similar number of passes in each of the games, and one of them actually felt a little bit more dangerous than the other.
It's really, and what's more worrisome about it is like, obviously, and we talked about it already, like Danny Stone has came out with a much more attacking version on top of Juan Guerra's system. But the problem is that when you start kind of giving up on those possession principles of those quick touches, of those finding those little third man runs, and you just get in your head like we are full counterattacking, we're full through the channels. That's when you guys to get into the offensive third, and you lose all your ideas because I just want to go forward, and they have to kind of rebuild those principles with the new players because Edgardo Rito isn't going to play a 5-yard pass in the opposing third. He's crossing it every time. And that's something that they have to rebuild and reteach, especially to the new players, of how to bring the ball down. Let's keep long spells of possession in front of the opposing team's box.
I mean, again, right, if we want to talk, and you mentioned about Rito and his crossing ability in there and all of that, but when you actually look at some of the numbers in terms of the stats for the number of crosses that are even being taken, right? Rising attempt 9 crosses in the second half, but 7 of those come in the last 10 minutes, right? You're in a position whereby Rito is able to play that way.
Yeah.
But just the way that everyone is setting up, they're not getting in spaces to receive those crosses, so people aren't taking them on. Either that, or you're just not getting them out there to people like Rito in ways that they can be dangerous.
Yeah, and for Edgardo, I think, I talk about like he is very one-dimensional, so maybe he has to get more involved. And then also it's just recognizing your personnel. If I'm Dariusz, I'm recognizing that every time he gets the ball, especially in the last 10 minutes of a 1-0 game, I need to be in the box. And same goes for Panos, the same goes for Equacio, who was, in that role. And then on the other side, it wasn't Gabby that finished the game. It was Azakar that finished the game. It's recognizing that thing they were missing was recognizing the moment and recognizing the personnel. And that just comes with time with playing with people. Like I've had plenty of teammates where I knew if they got the ball, they weren't going to touch the ball back and they were going to dribble 3 times. I know that's who they are. And so I would then position myself to be like, okay, where do I think he's going to go? How can I be available to him then? Because I know that one-touch pass isn't coming back. Or people where I knew that they were going to want to play long, right? And so you learn those things and you start to position yourselves for that, and they just don't have that familiarity yet. But they need to start learning, like, what spaces does Edgardo want you to be in? What spaces can Dariush get into to allow Panos to be open and things like that?
Yeah, well, that felt good, having a nice little rant about that one.
Yeah.
We're trying to clear it out. Unfortunately, we're still going to have to talk about it afterwards. But while Rising may not be winning on the field, you can win off the field with the Arizona Lottery's new ticket and promotion called Arizona Adventure. There are 3 ways you can play and win. You can play Arizona Adventure lottery tickets featuring 3 iconic landscapes. It's Picacho Peak, Monument Valley, and Camelback Mountain. These tickets have prizes up to $50,000. You can also check in at geolocated adventures at 10 destinations across the state, all the way from up in Flagstaff down to the south in Yuma. Or you can enter tickets online for a chance to win $1 million in cash and Arizona travel prizes. Proceeds from ticket sales are supporting environmental conservation, among other important initiatives across the state. And of course, the Arizona Lottery, it's not just about playing games and winning prizes. It's about giving back to the state and its communities. So while Rising aren't winning, you can too. Visit azadventure.com for more information on how you can take an adventure for the chance to win $1 million in cash and Arizona travel prizes. And of course, well, Rising again can't seem to fuel up the attack, right? It's pretty slow. It's not going very far, is it? It's not going very far there. Would you say, Damon? Producer Damon? Are they fueling up that attack?
I'm laughing at Reese because he said that you're no ad man.
Oh, I know.
You don't have the charm that Max does.
I know. I mean, still. But, while Rising can't quite fuel up that attack, you can fuel up your car at Circle K. And you can get a discount on there.
Max would have been proud of that one.
Max would have been proud of that one. And you can get yourself a discount if you sign up for the Inner Circle program. You sign up for free. Download the Circle K app to do that. And on your first 5 fill-ups, you will save 25 cents per gallon just by signing up for the free Inner Circle rewards program. You get all kinds of other good benefits as well, saving 3 cents per gallon every day. After that point, you get extra products in for free, of course. You'll get down the line, you get the snacks, you get drinks, all good stuff. Remember, you can join the Inner Circle program for free by downloading the Circle K app today. Of course, terms and conditions apply. At participation locations, visit circlek.com for details. Right. Let's move on now a little bit. Let's talk about what else we've seen, I think, just from Rising over the 2 games in general. Now, one of them in particular that keeps coming out, people obviously look at the players that haven't been, that moved on over the off season. Okay, so you're talking of your Danny Trejos, you're talking the Manuel Arteagas. Yeah, of course, another one in there is Carlos Harvey. One of the things that Carlos Harvey brought so well to this team was his ability to progress the ball. Right? Yeah, he was that driving force, almost like the motor in the midfield that would kickstart things going at times. Now, that's something we haven't really seen as much this season. I did ask Danny earlier today what he had to say on that and kind of who or what he was looking to be that driving force in the absence of Carlos Harvey. And here is what Danny had to say.
It'll come from different areas, I feel, this season. I think the team is structured and built in a way now where I think we have that drive certainly from wide areas for us. I think we're very capable in terms of athleticism and athletic ability to move the game forwards from the wide areas. In Darius and Rémi from a central forward position, both have very good athletic capabilities in different ways. And from the midfield area, we have tens who are both quality in possession and link the game very well. And then depending obviously on who's on the field at any given point, we have players who perhaps have more forward running traits in them. And every player is different in this, and how we structure a team will, I think, include a little bit of balance in this regard. And so, again, I don't highlight specifically one area. I feel this year we need to be a team that has this type of threat from multiple places, and also the ability to play, and like I've said, to have dominance of the ball from multiple areas as well. So it's not about players who have one skill set. It's players who maybe have strengths in the way they play, and obviously we recognise where players' strengths are, but also the ability not just to play in a predictable one dimension, and that's going to be important for us this year.
So obviously we spoke about earlier, some of those players. Lawrence Weig is a perfect example, right, of someone who is introducing the more vertical element to this team. But when you're in a position whereby that you've got 2 6s in the middle of the park who, by and large, aren't going to progress the ball, I understand what Danny's saying, that they need that to come from other players as well, but can you really afford not to have that still present in the middle?
It kind of depends on how the rest of the game is shaping up. Like in that first game against Birmingham, you have Wyke, and then you had in that game, oh my God, it wasn't, who was playing in the other right center back? My brain just went mute.
JP Skeers?
JP Skeers, I'm sorry. JP Skeers, my brain just went mute. No, but JP Skeers and Wyke, they're driving the ball forward through the air, right? And so when you're getting that, you can live without it. But over the course of the year, when you're playing these high-pressing teams, and I expect more teams to start to high-press Rising because they notice that works, you need somebody who can turn against the pressure and drive forward. And that's something that Carlos Harvey did extremely well, obviously being a big body, but he was willing to take those chances to turn and try something. And even last season, like Jose had his moments, especially initially when he was first getting into the starting 11, that he looked like he would be a player that could do that. He seemed very comfortable on the ball. Now he seems a lot more kind of conservative, but Carlos did a great job of being able to turn it and progress the ball and progress play, because if you can't, you get stuck and closed in these small kind of possession boxes in the defensive third, and it's hard to get out of that.
Right, and that's something that really hurts you when you're dealing with that kind of a high press, because again, it's when you look at the game, and I was chatting with Ryan, of course, Ryan Sikora, about this earlier today, and it's one of those things whereby when you're playing against Birmingham Legion, they let them have space, they let them have time in the middle of the park. They were able to pick out their pass and able to work out how to get out of those kind of areas. But when you're then facing a higher pressing team, and the instinct is always just to go backwards or sideways, and they're not making the most of maybe someone who comes available and being able to quickly play out of that press, that's where you then start to hit some problems. Now, I know, and this is something as well that Danny kind of brought up later on in a separate question, but I'm kind of intrigued because I don't think we've really seen it very much. But if you're looking at ways of playing out of those kind of situations, another one here, and it's interesting, I'm intrigued what you think about this one, would be finding ways to get Rocco Rios Novo more involved in the build-up play. Maybe more, obviously, again, this is risky, right? When you play with your goalkeeper a little bit higher up the field, a little bit more the ball at their feet, it's risky. But we saw San Diego Loyal doing it a lot with Coque Vegas, right? So we've seen this. We've seen this in this league before. And the question then becomes, well, if you're effectively playing with 11 and you're facing a press, and you're using him almost as a centre-back in those kind of moments to get out of that one, you're likely going to free somebody else up, aren't you, to help you play out of the press?
Yeah, I mean, the numbers match up. The question becomes, how much of a leeway do you give Rocco in those scenarios? How much do you trust his range? I think Rocco's great with the ball at his feet. Like, that is one of his strengths. He can hit passes a long way and kind of all over the pitch, especially in his own half. I think the bigger question is, one, do you trust your counter press? Because if you lose the ball, you can't let them turn and shoot. You can't let them turn and counter quickly because Rocco's out. So the counter pressing has to be something that is drilled into that if Rocco does leave the box to be in possession. And then the next part is how well does Danny think that Rocco can handle that type of responsibility and that ability to kind of think on the fly, which I think he can do. I think it just would, like I said, it comes with that teaching of, okay, we are going to counter press if we lose the ball, because you have to do that.
I know, and it's... The thing about it all, though, in general, and this is where, okay, we'll address the Julio point in a minute, because I think it's an interesting one to think about with the midfield. But the interesting one to me about almost just how negative at times that midfield can feel is that you get caught up in a situation where trying to play it out of the back, your wing backs aren't going to come all the way back most of the time. It's not because they're lazy or anything, right? It's how the structure of this team is, right? The way that they defend with four not by Edgardo Rito dropping all the way back. That's not what the game plan is here. That's not how they're going to play in those moments.
Yeah.
But he's not all the way back. The midfield aren't by and large passing the ball forward.
Yeah.
And so to me, it feels like then a lot of the progressing the ball at that point comes from, you got to look at long balls. And that to me feels like it's, I mean, unless you're going to get moments where Wyke can step up or Mo can step up a little bit more. But then, of course,
San Antonio won a championship just sending the ball long every time.
I mean, you can, but it's not really the identity of this club.
That's true.
And not the way that they've moved, at least. Definitely under Juan Guerra. And I don't see that Danny is really abandoning that.
No.
I don't know. I still feel as though there's... It just doesn't feel like... And again, I've said this a few times about these players in midfield. I'm not criticizing the individuals in midfield as players, but I'm not sure necessarily that the pairing works together. That's the concern, right? Yeah. You can have Jose Andres Hernandez out there. You can have Renzo Zambrano out there.
Right.
Can you have the two of them out there together at the same time as your primary plan? I don't think it's necessarily the best. And then you move on to the alternatives, which becomes... I know I've seen people talking in the past in our chat about Emil Cuello and Erickson Gallardo as players. Let's get them out there. They'll do more. Well, they look all right off the bench because they're coming on for 10 minutes. Okay, I'm not sure that they're necessarily a turn to start game kind of option either.
Right. Well, Erickson, I've questioned this every time, specifically for him. I've questioned him every time. I just don't know if he's a 10 or a midfield in the middle of the field. He's not somebody that you necessarily want in those tight spaces getting on the ball. He's no Fede or Panos. Like, I don't know necessarily why Danny has made a move this year to bring him on as a sub at the 10, especially when Erickson came in every single one of those playoff games as a wingback and affected the game, especially against San Diego.
Mm-hmm.
Like, his pace down the wing is something that is so deadly, especially for tired legs to defend. I don't know why he's gone towards having Azakar go into that role as kind of that bench wing player. But no, I think you bring up the best point of, like, I don't think that, like, Jose hasn't necessarily objectively been bad. He has been himself, and Renzo has been himself, and they have done their jobs of being themselves and doing what their jobs are. And so now the question for Danny is, okay, who else can I put in there that can drive the ball? Is it Dorotioto? Is it, whoever else it may be?
Skiers, maybe as a midfielder. I mean, we haven't really seen, that's the problem now. We haven't seen those minutes from those guys in this team in midfield.
And it's kind of a thing of, like, we knew that this was a problem after that Birmingham Legion game. And so how many games, like, early in the season when you're supposed to try stuff out, and even in the preseason before now, like, this should have been an issue that has already been solved, and it just hasn't yet. And I think it's something that Danny has to start kind of tinkering with the lineup to find a solution for.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I see Devon in there is trying to argue that the Gallardo and Cuello need to start, and I'm gonna
not at a 6.
It's not gonna. I'd agree. I don't think that Emil Cuello will play a game 90 minutes in those kind of positions that we're talking about replacing people in. I feel as though Gallardo, if you're putting him out wide, means you're going to replace someone like Rito or Torres, or
I mean, if you're putting Gallardo on, you're switching Gabby Torres to the other side, and Gallardo and Rito are like for like swap. They're just different. They're just different footage.
The thing to me about it is that Gallardo again is at his best when you bring him on 10 minutes from the end and just have him run at them. I think that's very much it's a very specialist kind of role. The guy who can just run at a defense and make him. Yeah.
And to that point, so is Emil Cuello with maybe 30 minutes at the end of, like, he is a very high energy guy. He goes and he disrupts stuff, and he also is kind of like that 6 man in basketball where I come on and I'm just shooting. I mean, you notice how many shots from 25 yards out Emil Cuello takes when he comes on.
It's quite Joey Calistri-esque,
isn't
it?
He just lets it fly. And he just kind of lets it fly, and he can do that because when he's coming on, they need that. But can he do that 65 minutes when it's 0-0? That's the kind of question that I don't necessarily know that's a role that he fits into.
I'm not sure that we've seen him do that when he has played longer stretches for this team. I don't think that he has.
Right.
And that's where, again, I get to this point where it's just like, I mean, is it Dorotioto who's the option? Is it Skias who can do more maybe from one of those positions? It's hard to tell because, again, we haven't seen enough of them playing in the midfield on this team to know quite what it is that they're going to want, quite what they're going to look like if they are put into the midfield in that kind of a role. Or is it something that Rising still needs to consider? I mean, hey, Carlos Harvey's not playing with the first team at all right now. I mean, I'll put it this way. I think, and I understand this team will, of course, have their own ideas, much as they did when it became obvious that Kevin Lambert was going to go out on loan. But what I'll say is if Carlos Harvey goes to another USL team on loan, I don't feel as though the reaction from fans will be particularly happy about that.
And I think also, and not even like bringing necessarily Carlos Harvey back, but fans have to realize is like it was mid-season changes that really, like, this team that finished last year's champions wasn't the team that we watched through that first 10 or so weeks. I mean, Jackson Conway started a game up there. Manu couldn't hit the back of the net. Fede was still starting. Like Panos had to come in later in the year.
Fede's starting now. I mean,
that's true. But Panos had to come in. John Stenberg had his situation, but he came back. Like, he wasn't starting at like, this was a team that went through so many different lineup changes and so many different rough spots in that season last year. And that's what I said at the end of the broadcast. It's like, yeah, this is a really bad start, but they've had bad stretches. They've had bad moments. You have to kind of stick with it, and there's still a lot more tinkering. I don't think this is the final starting 11 at the end of the season. Who knows who they go out and add.
No, it's true. It's true. But I mean, just to kind of draw a little bit of a line under this, I'll just talk through now when you pull up the stats and you look at what's happening in terms of chances created, right? And where those chances by and large are coming from. Only out of that central midfield pairing of Renzo Zambrano and Jose Hernandez, they did create 3 chances out of quite a few in that first game.
Yeah.
But in the second game, don't create a single chance. All the chances created in that second game come from players who are further up the pitch, wing backs. It's not coming anything from the middle. I feel as though, again, there's something does need to be addressed in terms of how you're going to play with those, because I fear, as much as Danny can say we don't want to be one-dimensional, and that's completely understandable, right? You want to have other players on the field who can do those kind of jobs in terms of you spray it out wide every so often. You're going to find ways of doing that.
Yeah.
But if you're reliant on that, because ultimately you know that if you go up the midfield, if you go up the middle of the park, it's just going to slow everything down.
Mm-hmm.
That's also somewhat one-dimensional. And you run the risk at that point of just saying people just know that your midfielders can't progress the ball.
Right.
And so just press them and force them to play backwards and see what happens.
Yeah, I mean, like, something has to change. Something has to, and again, there's a lot of different possible solutions, but like, and I'm sure Danny knows this, like, you can't watch that game, especially against Monterey Bay.
Come on, San Diego are in a box now.
Sorry. Against, this has been a long day. Against Monterey, like, you can't watch that in good conscience and think like, okay, that was all right. Like, nothing needs to change. Like, and it's more than just the loss. Like, it's not even that fact that they lost. It's the way that they lost. Like I said, like, I was sitting there like, what are we doing?
Yeah.
Like, nobody wanted to be there. There wasn't energy. It was lethargic. Nothing was going into the attacking third. They had like 12 attacking third entries in the first half or something like that, to like Monterey Bay's like 30. Or something like that.
It was something insane like that.
And like, you can't, that's not sustainable. Like, you can't continue to do that. Something has to change. And it doesn't seem like it's a systematic change. It's a personnel change.
Yeah. No, it's, I mean, actually, here's the exact numbers on that one in terms of final third entries for the first half. 25 for Phoenix Rising, 44 for Monterey Bay FC. So yeah, it's pretty poor, to be honest. And again, not much that you can do about it now in terms of looking back, but as you look forward, I think it's more they have to find a solution, and it's going to be something either personnel or tactical or however they choose to go down that route, rather than just an expectation that you give them a few weeks to get used to each other and it'll fix itself.
And I will say, like, this is a change that needs to happen before that New Mexico game.
That's the problem, right? And you're right. I've said this now I definitely said it on the weekend. Oakland as a game, you don't win that game. You're going into a game against a team that, I won't call them a rival because I know Rising fans don't like calling them a rival, but they are the team that Rising fans, arguably, that remains in this league, hate the most.
Yes.
Okay? I think not being winless in 3 games leading up to that one makes that game a must-win game.
Yeah.
I don't think you get out of this month without a win and have any kind of positive atmosphere around the club at all.
And by proxy, this Oakland game becomes even more important because you have to set up for that game against New Mexico. New Mexico's been a lot better this year than they were last year. They've shown good through the first 2 games. And
Oakland have been all right as well. Oakland are 4 points out of 6 as well.
And 4 points out of 6 is almost as good as you can ask for.
With the drawers against Charleston Battery as well. So it's not as though they...
And so it's like something... And it's like you need that signature win. And it just seems like that New Mexico game sets up to either be a springboard to the rest of the year if they can get a big win in front of the home fans and they can, push on from there and be like, okay, like we have some positives. Or if they lose, it's just this constant lingering feeling of like, maybe we aren't the same team that we were last year, which they're not. And I think they need to realize that. But also, and I said this on the broadcast, like you have to carry yourself with some pride that you're wearing that on your shoulder. And go in with a confidence and an energy of like, we are the defending champs, and they just don't seem to have that all the time.
No, it just feels strange, doesn't it, really, in terms of the way they go at it. But I don't know. We'll see. We'll see. Hopefully it won't be a night like we saw last weekend, last Saturday, which was a pretty dismal night. But hey, if it is, at least you can drown the sorrows, of course. Go over to Valley Taproom and have a good time. Valley Taproom, they got 2 locations now. Not just the one in Gilbert that we've taken you out to in the past. They've also opened up a new location out in Queen Creek. All the same good stuff. You'll have a great time if you head over there. And of course, remember all the different beers, 30 different rotating beer handles. We've had that many nights there, and it's whatever you want. They've probably got something there it's gonna really whet your palate. But as you look as well, even wines, ciders, plenty of stuff there. Great stuff. Good bar food menu, of course, and bring some stuff in from next door as well. Have a great night out there at Valley Taproom, as we always do. I'll have to get Max out there at some point in the near future, I'm sure, and we'll post that one on socials. And go check them out on socials, of course. Valley Taproom over on socials. And tell our guy Donald we said hi. Right, you can also have, as well, if you need, maybe stock up the fridge. I'm hearing that Max hasn't been stocking up the fridge, Damon. Is that true? I hear we've been relying on the charity of others.
Yeah, I mean, we haven't had like a good set of, Four Peaks beer here in the office in quite some time.
Not provided by Max, at least.
It wasn't,
and that's a problem.
The good man that is Craig Morgan
exactly
walked in here today with all of his excess beer from our St. Patrick's Day party and just stocked it up with all kinds of Four Peaks, various, the Golden Lager. You got the Wow Wheat, you got the Kilt Lifter, all of it. Craig's got all of it.
Great stuff. You know what it is missing, though, of course, and it's missing it because Max, again, hasn't been stocking it up. Where's the Bad Birdie Juicy Golden Ale? I mean, have you managed to try one? You haven't. See, I have, because I took my own initiative and went and got some.
Fair enough.
Okay.
Maybe I should.
And it's really good. It's really good. You'd enjoy it a lot. You go out, you can get it at the 8th Street Pub. You can get it in cans from your nearby store of choice. But it's really, really good stuff. The Bad Birdie Juicy Golden Ale is in now, and it's just really drinkable, really nice. When they say Juicy Golden Ale, Damon, they mean it. Juicy. It is different. How
would you rate that on a scale of 1 to 10 in terms of juiciness?
Oh, I mean, if you wanted me to rate the beer itself, you know that I'm a WoW drinker, right?
Of course.
I feel as though this is I'd put it above the WoW.
Wow.
Okay.
Are you serious?
I am serious. I went out to the 8th Street Pub after already trying the Bad Birdie Juicy Golden Ale, and I did pick it ahead of the WoW because it's good stuff. It's good stuff. You can get your hands on it as well, and you get your hands on other Four Peaks beers as well. Make sure to visit fourpeaks.com/locators to find all your favorite beers and events. Check out Four Peaks Brew and Four Peaks Pub on social to keep up with the latest Arizona's hometown brewery. And of course, you must be 21 or older to drink Four Peaks, and please enjoy responsibly. Right. Let's start to wrap things up here, shall we, Devon?
Yes, sir.
There's a few Open Cup games going on right now. Let's have a look. Should we have a look through the Open Cup games here? Let's see. Northern Colorado currently beating Tulsa Athletic 3-0. Foro are currently beating Austin 2.
MLS Next Pro Team.
MLS Next Pro Team, Austin 2, who were, the winners of Next Pro last year.
So, and correct me, this I never really understood. So it's which MLS? So I know none of the I know Messi's not playing in the Open Cup, but so some teams are actually getting to send their MLS Next Pro teams, and then some teams are getting to send their MLS teams. So
here's what's happening. All of the Champions Cup teams
are
not involved at all.
Okay.
Then you have the next 8 teams, well, only with the exception of Houston Dynamo's defending champions of the Open Cup.
Okay.
The next 7 teams then after Houston Dynamo plus 7 in MLS, who didn't qualify for the Champions Cup, are in this tournament with their first teams.
Okay.
Everyone else, if they have an MLS Next Pro team, DC United, of course, do not enter the Next Pro teams.
So who goes in for DC United?
No one.
Okay.
I know it's a farce as it has been pretty much since the beginning, but that's how it's kind of working here.
Okay.
So when Rising enters, this is the first round. Rising will enter in the 4th round. That's a round of 32. At that point, they'll be split into pods. There'll be 8 pods of 4 set geographically. Each will have one MLS team, one USL team that's entering at that round. So Rising enter in that round. Everyone except the top 8 USL teams enters earlier in the competition. Right. And then you have 2 teams that have progressed from previous rounds. So that'll then be drawn within that pod, and Rising would potentially draw an MLS team in the first round, potentially not. We'd have to wait and see how that goes.
It'd be unfortunate for Rising.
But yeah, I mean, even if they avoid them in that fourth round, the round when they enter in, it's likely they would see them in the next round because they remain within the pod for the 2 rounds. But yeah, this is obviously the earliest start to this one. And as you look at some of the teams that remain yet to play, big one tonight, Portland Timbers 2 taking on El Farolito. El Farolito, best described, it's a burrito place pretty much in San Francisco. And they took the name of the
there you go. Is it a USL League 2 team? I don't think it is.
No,
not in San Francisco. It has to be Nisa.
No, I don't think they're even in that. They're not. They're within the NPSL.
They're NPSL.
NPSL. Okay. There we go. They are a previous winner of the tournament. They played under the name of Club Deportivo Mexico.
There you go.
And they won it in 1993. So
there you go.
Prior to the modern era per se of the cup in there, but some other ones that are of interest as well. Of course, there is the Washington Derby ballot in their first Open Cup. Will be playing Spokane Velocity also in their first Open Cup. Irvine Zeta, the Nisa team that Rising managed to poach their assistant coach from. They're hosting a team out there in Southern California that won the National Amateur Cup. And no one really knows who they are. They play locally as best we can tell.
Okay.
And have managed to make it into this tournament by virtue of winning the National Amateur Cup.
There you go.
There's a name here of a place in Pennsylvania that I will not attempt to pronounce. And they're playing Charlotte Independence. It's in German, I think this name is, if I'm not mistaken. Like a German social club.
Yeah.
In Pennsylvania. And they are hosting Charlotte Independence. There's some really weird stuff. Of course, this is the interesting one, right? Because of course, the way that this worked out, 32 amateur clubs, 32 professional teams, be they in Next Pro, NISA, or League One. And so they've matched them up perfectly. So each amateur team is playing a professional team. So every time you see an amateur team get a win, they are pulling off an upset.
It's electric. Right? Shout out to Arizona Monsoon.
Arizona Monsoon. I don't really know what's going on with them right now, the NISA team. No one really knows. No one's heard anything from them in a couple of weeks. But they will be traveling away to the Lubbock Matadors to play in Texas. And of course, there was a forfeit as well in this round. The Georgia Lions, they're not ready. They're not ready to start play yet, as NISA had to push back its start date.
That sucks.
So the Georgia Lions had to forfeit their first round clash. So they're out, and another amateur team is already through. This is, I tell you what, it's fun. It's fun. You gotta love the Open Cup.
Especially when you see some of the places that these teams are playing at. Like you said,
Vermont Green.
You mentioned the part. No, Vermont had a stadium.
Yeah, but they had over 4,000 people out there to watch an amateur League 2 team, Vermont Green, in a tournament that we were told, people prefer the idea of the Open Cup to the actual Open Cup. No, people like the Open Cup.
Well, yeah, 100%. It gives, like you said, those League 2 and those NISA and those other teams a chance to play against these big teams. And especially, like, I feel like it being in these smaller environments adds to the atmosphere of it, because it's like, hey, we're all going to huddle in together. It's going to be super loud. It's going to be, a lot going on. And it's going to be like, hey, look at this professional team that's out here playing in the slums or in this random stadium.
That Tulsa Athletic one just looks like a random
park they painted on.
We've already
seen
this
line.
before. The halfway line is wobbly. It's blue because the field is dirt. It's
when Devon mentioned he knew Messi wasn't going to be playing in the U.S. Open Cup. My first thought was like, just imagine Messi playing
out there.
I'd love to see that
in a fucking.
Tell me you wouldn't love to see that
on a Tuesday night. Like, do you know how many people would come? Like, do you know how that vibe would be?
It'd be phenomenal.
It would be amazing.
Electric.
Yeah.
Can you imagine that? Seriously, in just a random public park in Oklahoma.
At a park, because who's going to charge? They're not charging me to walk into a public park I go to on the weekend.
They've got fences. They do have fencing there, so I suppose they could try and put banners up. But it's also just a park outside. You can go stand in the park and just watch from the corner. That's the classic kind of stuff. Look, It's great. It's great. Honestly, this tournament, you've got to love it. You've got to love it. And of course, you've also got to cheer on everyone other than the MLS Next Pro team, because we don't want that. Inter Miami are not going to play Phoenix Rising, because Inter Miami are not in the Open Cup this year because of the MLS kind of attempt at ducking out. But hey, we'll see. We'll see what happens. You never know. Could mean that things might be in Rising's favor. Maybe there's a chance for a run.
A Republic type run?
Maybe. We'll see. We'll see if they can get this stuff together before they enter the Open Cup. That'll come in May, the very beginning of May. But you know what, Devon? It's been great having you on here.
It's been great being here.
It is. We've managed to really just get some stuff, I think, off the chest about this team and the way they're playing at the moment. And hopefully, fingers crossed, when we sit back here in a week's time.
After the Oakland Roots game.
After the Oakland Roots game, won't be quite as negative. Hopefully, things will be on the up at that point. But of course, with that game coming up on the weekend, we're going to be previewing it on Thursday. Rumor has it the Adman may be back. The Adman may be
possibly
back. Possibly. We'll have to wait and see. I'll believe it when I see it. Do you believe it when you see it as well there, Damon?
Until his next vacation.
Yeah, sounds about right.
It's Mr. Vacations here. I mean, he'll be gone in like 2 weeks or something.
Rumor has it he goes on more vacations than Rising's attack for the start of this season. But there we go. Before we sign off, of course, remember to sign up if you haven't yet done so to be a diehard. You can get all the details over at gophnx.com. Lots of good stuff included with that, including, of course, access to our diehards only lounge over on Discord. That's where we dropped all the information about certain Adman's tattoo, which maybe it's healed up now, but of course you would have been able to watch that one live and uninterrupted and witness the sheer roasting of that man by this entire office. Wasn't it fun, Damon? You participated in that.
Remember when he started getting like really angry and just like combative?
So angry. But I remember when he started like trying to shout at everyone and like saying things about people.
Tattoo in the office?
He did. It was over in the other studio right there. Todd did it live in this studio. But yeah, I remember at one point he started it off by like going at Derek, and Derek just walked over and called him a scumbag. Like, I mean, it's about right. I'm not going to argue with it, but you could have watched that. You could have heard that all, and just happening in real time if you've been a diehard. So don't miss out on that. Who knows? Maybe he does owe us another forfeit of some variety.
We're always cooking up something over here for our diehards, and I'm sure that they're going to get Max to do something insanely embarrassing that you guys will love.
I think we might. We may have to do that for diehards as well. We'll see. But make sure to go sign up and become a diehard. Of course, you get access to the Discord, as we said. You also get access to all of our online content, and yet a free t-shirt as well when you sign up, and every year thereafter. Go to gophnx.com to learn more about that. And of course, we'll see you now on Thursday when the Adman comes back in. Until then, I'm not going to do the sign off. I'm not going to do it. We're not doing it anymore, Damon, until he gets back here.
I feel like you should just do it and like make fun of him in some way.
Should we just do it to make fun of Max?
It's the beautiful game, but it's way more beautiful when Max isn't on the show and Devon replaces him.
We all silly like the mayor.